What's up, everybody? I'm Jared Fearing, and this is episode 9 of Godzillatober. Today we're going to discuss what might be, in my opinion, the most overrated of Godzilla properties. Destroy All Monsters. Let's go. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. I'm Jared Fearing. I'm a lifelong Godzilla fan and a big fan of Halloween. And nothing says Halloween like monster movies. So this year, for the month of October, we're going to review every single Godzilla movie, from Gojira all the way to Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire. So join me this month for a new video every single day and see if I go insane in the process. Let's get to it. Now, I want to be clear. When I use the term overrated, it doesn't necessarily mean that something is bad. It just means that it is usually given credit or given praise that is kind of undeserving, or maybe it's built up to be something that it's not. And in that sense, I do really feel that Destroy All Monsters is quite overrated. The movie has some interesting concepts in it, and one of them is that it establishes Monsterland, which is kind of like their Monster Island. You see all the monsters living together in a human-controlled environment where they're kept in place using implants into the ground that shoots gas, and it kind of deters the monsters from leaving. Rodan has kind of a barrier so he can fly around, but he's not allowed to leave the island. It's an interesting system that they've kind of concocted to claim to control the monsters, so they're not running loose destroying the world. Another interesting thing is that this movie takes place in 1999. Kind of an odd choice. I mean, nothing in the movie really screams futuristic, so I'm not entirely sure why they made that decision to make it happen 30 years in the future from when the movie was actually taking place, 1969. So there's a few things like that that are interesting, but that's kind of like, the concept is cool, but it doesn't really do anything for the film. This movie came out kind of right at the, I don't want to say height because it's a show that's been running for almost 60 years, but it came out at a very popular time for Ultraman. The first Ultraman series was wildly popular, and the second series, Ultra 7, was currently running during this time. And I think it's indisputable that you see the influence of Ultraman in this movie. What do I mean by that? I have to give you a little bit of a history on Ultraman. Ultraman, which is a creation of Eiji Tsuburaya Productions, which is interesting because Eiji Tsuburaya actually worked on this film, as he did in many of the previous videos that I've mentioned. But with Ultraman, there's a bit of a formula to the series. Even today, they kind of follow the same concept. There are different human organizations that have been brought together to deal with alien threats, whether they're alien, kaiju, sometimes supernatural. Ultraman Leo has a whole arc where he's fighting like vampires and werewolves and ghosts. It's pretty cool. I love Ultraman. As I've mentioned before, I have a giant Ultraman tattoo on my leg, so I'm a huge Ultraman fan. But I'm a fan of Ultraman because of the stuff that goes on with the creatures and Ultraman battling them. The human stuff just kind of gets you from point A to point B. At no point was I like, you know what, lose the Ultraman stories, let's just do the humans fighting the monsters. Because it always kind of turns out the same. They fly around in their model spaceships, they shoot some beams at them, doesn't work out, Ultraman comes in, and he's the one who really takes care of the problem. Well, Destroy All Monsters kind of took what I just said. Let's take the humans and let them kind of lead the show without Ultraman. That's what they do in this movie. They've introduced a team of individuals who are actually like moon base operators that come back to Earth to find that the residents of their Monsterland, Monster Island, they've been kind of brainwashed, and the monsters are also brainwashed, and they're attacking all over the Earth. And this human team has to use their rocket and later like a very Ultraman-like car to do these different things. And it's just like, it's very reminiscent of what we were seeing on the human side of things in Ultraman at that time. So I think that those decisions they are actually not good decisions for the movie. They end up being kind of lame, but I can understand that they were trying to jump onto the popularity that they had established with Ultraman at that time. Destroy All Monsters represents another creative shift after we just saw one 2 movies ago. Son of Godzilla and Ebirah Horror of the Deep were an entirely new creative team, from effects to direction to music, and I don't know if those movies really were that successful or not, but for Destroy All Monsters, they brought back Ishiro Honda, they brought back Eiji Tsuburaya, they brought back Akira Ifukube, and I think they were trying to rekindle some of that earlier success, but they do one of the biggest mistakes in the series, in my opinion, which is that they essentially redo an earlier movie. This movie has almost the identical plot to Invasion of the Astro Monster, which is a lot of fun and very good. And they do that same kind of plot, which is like aliens brain controlling the citizens and the monsters. They do that again here, but much, much worse. That movie knew what it was. It knew that it was a B movie, and they kind of had fun with it, even though it was well acted. This movie is so serious, and it just drags on, and there's almost no fun to be had. The aliens claim to be from a planet called Kiraku, and the alien design, honestly, boring as shit. So terrible. Not a fan of the alien design at all. When we got the Zillions previous with the black mask and the antenna and the silver leotard, like, it looked great, it's iconic, I love it. The Kiraku aliens are literally women wearing like silver sequin sheets. It doesn't look visually interesting in any way. And we eventually do see the aliens' true form, and it turns out to be like stupid rock tadpoles. I just hate everything to do with the alien design in this movie. It seems uninspired, and it just is retreading old ground, but again, much worse. Which is surprising, because if you've ever watched any of the Ultraman series, one of the staples is that they always have really cool aliens. They have really cool aliens and monsters. The design is great. So this movie bringing back in Tsuburaya, it's really disappointing to see that that's what they came up with. It sucks. And this movie also takes us back to what they were starting to establish with a more serious trend, in that there are some bloody deaths in this movie. There's a gunfight that shows a headshot that is straight up bloody, but to be honest, that kind of thing, it doesn't really strike me as fitting with Godzilla. So it's almost out of place and kind of uncomfortable to see that in this movie, especially coming off of Son of Godzilla and Ebirah, which are so fun and like good family-friendly movies, and moving Godzilla to being the protector and superhero type character. It's an odd change, and I don't like it personally. As I already mentioned, the story kind of just is not very good, and it drags on and on and on. I've seen this movie several times over the years, not that much because I've never really been a huge fan, but this time I knew I was making this video and I wanted to pay close attention, and let me tell you, I almost fell asleep multiple times. It drags so long. There's a sequence in the middle where after about 30 minutes, you get to see the monsters briefly attacking some world landmarks, and that is very cool. And you get to see some lesser used Toho monsters like Gorosaurus, one of my favorites. You see him destroying the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. It's cool. And you get to see Rodan attacking Moscow very briefly, and for some reason Mothra attacks a lone train in the middle of nowhere. So there are some cool monster sequences, but that whole sequence I just mentioned is probably 2 minutes long, maybe, and then you're back to the boring human alien stuff. It seems like there was kind of a lot of Invasion of the Body Snatchers influence in this movie, which is odd. Invasion of the Body Snatchers was a very popular movie, but it was from about a decade earlier, and it's kind of like fuels a bit of the paranoia of, is this person an alien? Are they under control? And they do a little bit of that, but again, it's not enough to be compelling in any way. It just seems like there's a lot of elements thrown into this movie that never really pay off. When it comes to the action, there's mostly human action, to be honest, and it's a lot of shots of the rocket landing and taking off and flying, and eventually we do get to see their little science car that has a ray gun. And I guess it's kind of cool for a few seconds, but it's definitely not a drawing point. And they seem to be more interested in using the human team and the human effects than they did to do monster effects. And I think that's the main thing that attracts people to these movies. It's definitely what attracts me to them. Now, I don't want to shit all over this movie because there are some good qualities. They get to use some of these Toho monsters that we've not seen that frequently in the series. We get to see Gorosaurus, who's from King Kong Escapes. We get to see Baragon, who's from Frankenstein Conquers the World. And we get to see Manda, who's from the... What movie is Manda from? After a quick Google, Manda is from the movie Atragon. I was going to say like Atlantagon or something like that. That's not a very good movie either, just as a side note. But they do get to make use of these properties. They also have Varen from Varen the Unbelievable, even though he's in this movie for like a total of 2 seconds. In total, there's 11 monsters in the film, and that's pretty sweet. The final battle is good. The final battle is worth watching if you can find it on YouTube or you've got access to this movie on streaming. I believe it is free on sites like Tubi. And the final battle has 6 suit actors and 2 marionettes operating King Ghidorah. So it is a pretty sweet final fight. There's a lot of effort put in, but again, it's not that long when you look at the rest of the movie we have to sit through to get to it. King Ghidorah looks great as always. And in this movie, he had 22 cables operating him like a big puppet, and he had 3 cable operators, 3 to 5, depending on what the shot was. It's interesting that they chose to bring back King Ghidorah because he's also the villain of Invasion of the Astro Monster. But in this movie, he touches down to defend the alien base, which is at, again, Mount Fuji. They really love making that Mount Fuji set work. But to be honest, King Ghidorah just gets his ass beat by everybody. He takes on Anguirus, who has a new design for this movie, and the Anguirus redesign, it's awesome. But he beats up Anguirus, and then everyone else proceeds to beat the living shit out of King Ghidorah, including this scene where Godzilla steps on his throat repeatedly, and even Godzilla's son, Minilla, blows a smoke ring that wraps around one of Ghidorah's necks and then, kills him / makes him go unconscious or stuns him, whatever. But King Ghidorah gets his ass beat. The aliens show up in the side of the mountain and their base is in the form of a bubble, and Godzilla just smashes the shit out of it. One of the interesting monsters that's involved in the final battle is we see Kumonga, who was just the terrifying villain of Son of Godzilla. So they obviously wanted to use him again, but honestly, like in Son of Godzilla, he's pretty damn scary. He's got that spike that shoots out of his mouth. He's hunting humans. I don't really like seeing him in any kind of a hero light. So to see his inclusion is a little bit weird, but I get it. They wanted to make use of the suit and the puppet. So whatever, I'll let it slide. But it is a little bit weird, especially when they had Baragon, who looks great, and they had Varen. They could have had these other options, but they chose to reuse Kumonga, who's just a scary spider. Oh, and as a side note, the word Kumo in Japanese means spider. So Kumonga is just a play on that, an extension of that. All in all, Destroy All Monsters is a bit of a pain to get through. Like I said, it almost put me to sleep, but the end battle is cool. So for this movie, I'm actually not going to recommend it. If you really want to see the final battle, I would find it on Tubi and just fast forward to that part. You're not missing anything on the human story side of things. Now, Destroy All Monsters is a great name. In Japan, it was called Attack of the Marching Monsters, which is also very cool. There's also been a lot of fan art and official art that's very cool that makes this movie seem like it's more than it is. This is one of those movies where like the memory associated with the VHS cover, the official art, the knowing that King Ghidorah fights all these other monsters, knowing all those things makes it seem better than it is. I think that if I saw this movie once and then never watched it again and saw frames of it online and saw people talk about it, I might be like, oh yeah, it's pretty good. But I've seen it a few times and I always kind of have the same reaction. It drags, it's boring, it retreads movies that are better. And yes, the final monster battle is cool, but it only lasts for about like 8 minutes or something like that. So is it worth wasting an hour and 20 minutes of just absolute drag time to get to? I don't think so. I'm going to say I don't recommend this one, and if you want to see a good King Ghidorah movie, then watch Invasion of the Astro Monster. And there's more good Godzilla stuff to come in the Showa era, even though we are getting to the tail end of it. Up next, I'm even debating if we should even cover a video on this, but it's a Godzilla after-school special, so to speak, that fully uses reshot footage mixed with a little bit of new footage and a new monster who bullies Godzilla's son. It's an interesting movie. All monsters attack next time on Godzillatober.